Yeah, it's an interesting question because often people are talking about standards and how have you changed your standards, and the honest answer is we didn't, because we were already working at those world-class standards. World class is world class. We're always pushing the boundaries, but world class is world class. So, but it's the application of those standards. So, for example, I used to run a big hospital in the UK, and you would treat a handrail differently in an acute, diseases ward, differently than you would treat it in maybe the office. So what we've found is that we're having to apply those standards differently now. So handrails everywhere get treated the same as they might do in an acute hospital. So it's just the application of what we do and where we do it. It's not really anything that's changed, just the applications of it. So there's great awareness on, for example, the control and prevention of infection. Again, it's nothing new to me from managing hospitals, but it is probably new to some of our cleaning staff or soft services staff. So where they might be used to cleaning in a commercial area or something like that, they're now having to tailor those standards and those skills to what might usually be used in hospitals and acute areas. So that's been an opportunity for us to train people and educate people. Yeah, in our offices we had an exact makeup replica of a hospital room, so complete with bed and medical equipment. So we already trained on that anyway because we've looked after healthcare projects, but it just wasn't applied in most areas to that level, those standards to that level. Another good example would be air conditioning units. You might treat an air conditioning unit differently in an office building than you would in perhaps say a discotheque or somewhere like that, because you need more air changes because of heat and humidity and things. Equally, you treat it differently if it's in an operating theatre in a hospital or in an acute area or in a dirty utility area or something. Whereas what we're finding now is that people want to apply those types of standards to just general areas because of the transmission of infection. So, as engineers, you're trained to look after air conditioning units, but what you might then do is get used to a certain application in a certain type of environment. And it was just, so education, I guess, is maybe a good word, but what we were doing was bringing people back and saying, hey, these standards, now we're going to apply them in a different type of environment. Yeah, well, some of the tough decisions was making sure all our staff was safe. So, for example, we took extra accommodation, which is it's run into tens of millions of dirhams to put in place, but it was the right thing to do. So the pandemic obviously hit our bottom line, but it was the right thing to do. We've had no serious illnesses and no deaths in Emrill, and that's not an accident. We took all the necessary precautions, and our board supported us the whole way through that. So I sat with the board and said, guys, we need to spend this money off the bottom line, making our people safe. And they said, absolutely, go ahead and do it. So it was kind of tough in some way, but it was also the right thing to do. And it just seemed like, it was a common sense decision. Well, I think people are more interested in the FM sector. So previously, you might work in an office building, and you would employ an FM company to maintain your office building. But what's happening now is people are very interested in how that's being done, to what standards. I always say there's kind of four things we've got. What have we got? What do we want to do to it? How will we maintain it? To what standards and that kind of thing. So I think people are getting much more interested in how we manage their building, to those standards and that kind of thing. So they're more interested, which means you've got to educate your clients on what you're doing and why you're doing it and that kind of a thing. I just think there's a broader kind of view on maintenance and standards. I wouldn't call it a radical shift, but certainly as technology improves, there's a shift. So I remember back, when I was a young man and we would do maintenance or certain jobs, and it would be a paper-based system, and each system had a logbook. So you'd have a logbook for fire dampers, a logbook for the fire alarm, a logbook for the air conditioning units. Now that's all held electronically. People can get jobs on their PDAs. So our guys have got PDAs. Somebody calls up and says, hey, my air conditioner isn't working. That sends through a link to the PDA. He gets that PDA directly and he heads off. He does his job. He records it electronically in a way that goes. And that means that, it's not brand new technology. It's a decade old at least. But what that means is that we can then analyze what we're doing and we can see what things are breaking. We look for trends and things. And that's just, that's just traveling forward with technology. So I don't see any radical shift in terms of technology, because technology rarely becomes radical. You look at motor cars, they've been evolving for 100 years or more now, and they've gradually evolved into quite sophisticated things. I didn't see any radical changes, but there were incremental changes. I think the traditional, as I was saying before, I think people who are saying, I just want maintenance in my building, now they're much more aware. So there's FM has become a thing, and it was never, I used to say I worked in FM and people say, what's that? Now everybody knows what it is. I think there's ebbs and flows and the market changes in cycles. So I think at the moment what we're likely to see is more consolidation of things. So rather than have a soft services provider that does your concierge, they do your security, they do your cleaning and soft services, and then you have a separate company that does hard services, your lighting, your cooling, those kind of things. And then you might have a separate landscape company, you might have a separate infrastructure company that does your sewage and things. I think we're going to see consolidation of that. And again, that ebbs and flows over the years. We call it IFM, or integrated FM, or total FM. There's more of a shift towards that now for things like economies of scale, simplicity, control, particularly in terms of control of people, the amount of people coming and going from the building. If it's one central team or one company doing it, there's greater control.